Hello, I am Ben, and this is essentially my primary research into the different types of video games I can potentially use inside of my short. I did previously do some research into Super Mario Bros, but considering that took me so long, I decided to move on to this method so I can look up multiple games relatively quickly while still getting a good amount of information. So in this slightly long educational analysis video about video games, I will be sharing my experience all of playing with Minecraft, Portal 2, Stick Fight, Angry Birds and Rocket League, analysing the key traits about them such as the mechanics and how the game works, and specific details about them which I could include inside my short. So without further ado, I will start with the most popular game worldwide, Minecraft. The first thing to note about this game is the sheer size of things you can do in this. You can join worlds and play different game modes, play in creative where you have an entire world and every single tool, weapon and block to build absolutely anything you can imagine. Multiple dimensions you can travel to in biomes, but the one that stuck out to me the most was the survival mode, which is most likely to be the one that works best for my short considering it's survival. In survival, you start out with literally nothing. You have to punch trees to make your first tools, survive your first night by building a house, mine coal to smelt in a furnace, cook food which you get from animals, mine iron to make yourself stronger. From my experience in this game, survival is like fun and everything, and it makes for a fantastic narrative, but it is so incredibly hard to perform the narrative you make for it. You have to build everything, change the perspective, not die. I mean, you can make everything in creative and then turn the world into a survival so you don't have to mine through the blocks. But that only solves the issue of design, not really narrative. You still have to train animals and everything that's considered extremely hard to do. However, considering what I actually want to do with it, it shouldn't hopefully be that hard considering the fact that I'm actually recreating it in VFX, not really taking any in-game footage, more just using references for my VFX. I might still have to do some of the hard stuff so I know what to copy when actually making it, like with what I just said being the references, but hopefully it shouldn't be too hard. In this game, you essentially start out with nothing. We've already established this, but the aim of the game is to just build up your inventory. You have to mine for materials and build your house until you finally defeat what is considered the final boss of the game, which is the Ender Dragon, of which you do by going to the Nether, killing blazes, finding the End Fortress and going to the End Dimension where the Ender Dragon is, of which you then obviously kill. You can then go back to the world and continue on as normal like the Ender Dragon was never even there. Moving on to the actual mechanics of this game, however, you can see it's almost entirely in POV, because that's the default. You can switch perspectives by pressing F5, but more or less people play in POV. You can also only see one arm, which is something I thought was incredibly interesting when they went recreating this in VFX, but if you're holding something in your hand, your arm disappears and you can only see the tool you're holding. It also has a funky little animation whenever you're walking, like going up and down, so when I go to bring this into real life, I'll have to pay attention to that as well. As for the other on-screen elements, you also have the unique addition of your hotbar, where everything you hold sits where you have easy access to, as well as the life bar, hunger bar and armor bar. As the hunger bar goes down, you gradually lose the ability to sprint, only being able to walk, as well as when you run out of hunger, your heart's starting to deplete. It doesn't completely kill you, leaving you on only half a heart, but it does make for quite an interesting trip home, consistently only being one hit away from completely dying. The entire premise of this game is to just be creative. For something like Super Mario Bros, I can only take key elements because it has its own narrative, but with this I can literally just build a mansion in 3D and track it into my scene. There's a lot I can do with this game, which is just kind of hard not to include in my project, but considering the complexity of this game, the chances I'll just either bring the POV into real life, which means I just need the overlay, or use actual in-game footage, or just track a Minecraft object into the real world. I don't actually need that much more information. All I'll need to know is that once you drop something on the floor, it just rotates in a circle, and after like 5 minutes it despawns. We also have the fantastic addition of mobs that try to kill you, but also the addition of friendly mobs, so attempting to recreate that would also be quite interesting. Now moving on to Portal 2, this is definitely something a little more complex to replicate in VFX. Playing the entire story mode through, the only way I can really think to bring this into my short is to give myself a portal gun and then use portals in the real world, or by just tracking something into the gameplay, but then that would be horrible with trying to match the right perspective and then the compositing, so I'd rather just kind of bring the portals into real life. But after playing this game, it is kind of obvious what this game is by literally just playing it. It's basically just a puzzle game. You wake up from being in a medically induced coma for experimental reasons, only to wake up and find yourself in a post-apocalyptic world. After you wake up, however, you have the pleasure of finding Wheatley, a very sarcastic robot who helps you through the first few stages of the game, who guides you to the actual portal gun, where you then have to complete complete a series of levels with that portal gun while being held captive by a bigger, scarier AI intent on keeping you there until you die. But playing this game has just kind of made me want my own miniature robot for the short, so just kind of like a little pet for the character, for audience emotion. So I might experiment with voiceovers and 3D modeling with that kind of thing and see how that goes, but I'm not really too sure yet because, again, this is still just research. Focusing on more the mechanics of the game, however, the portal colours are both orange and blue, and any object such as yourself or something you can pick up can just walk through these portals. The portals are shot by this white fancy gun which shoots a concentrated beam of the colour of the portal it's shooting at the wall you want the portal to appear on. I don't personally have this big fancy gun, even though you can buy it, but something in this game was right near the beginning where you have to hit a big red button in order to spawn a portal, or sometimes the portal was already active without any interference, so honestly it should be just fine. If I do need a gun for my narrative to shoot a portal, I do have a Midwestern prop gun that I can just use if I get desperate, but the chances are I'll just have it automatically spawn. Another thing to note is the fact that these portals can only be shot against flat surfaces. Anything with a curve deflects the portal and it just simply doesn't open one. In the later stages of the game as well, we also have a variety of mysterious fluids. A blue one that bounces, a red one that makes you speedy, and the grey one that turns any surface into a surface that a portal can be shot onto. The blue and red one specifically is something I think would be extremely entertaining to try, but also quite difficult, so I'm unsure if I would actually do this. But the main thing I would want to actually take from this game is of course the two portals and potentially the sarcastic AIs, just making the villain something that can be laughed at. It might interfere with my current plans, but I'm not ruling anything out yet, so it's still just a suggestion. Stick Fight is our next contestant now, and I'm gonna be honest, as of currently I don't see myself using this game in my short. I did previously, but then after playing it I realised how complicated it would be to actually recreate, and there is no like real narrative to add to this here. All you really do is just punch random people on different maps with a variety of different weapons, and that's essentially the entire game. However, talking about the actual mechanics, the main levels I've seen just include platforms that break apart whenever shot at with certain guns. There's lava levels that don't kill you instantly but instead throw you around the map until you die. Random boss levels where you battle a friend who got the boss ability. Levels where you just stand on boxes. Levels that have chains that can break when shot, and then just flat out normal levels. There's a lot of versatility in this game when it comes to weapons and platforms, but all it really is just different ways to kill each other. I can rotoscope out entire battles into the real world, but even then I wouldn't have that much power. There's only really one thing I can take from playing this game, which is just the weapons. In this game, the weapons drop from the sky, and I could use some of these in-game guns and artillery and put it into the real world, such as the spear you can throw, the bubble gun that kind of just explodes, the ninja knife granting the ability to teleport, which is something I really want to try. Just taking every weapon I can and recreating it in VFX, so I don't actually have the action, just the weapons, which I kind of feel like is a better method for this kind of game. And after personally playing with every single gun in the game, my top picks are the ninja knife, the snake boomstick, the triple shotgun, and my personal favourite, the black hole gun. Now on to Angry Birds. This is the first iOS or mobile game that I'm actually doing, but considering the popularity of it, I do think it's worth mentioning. The aim of the game is literally just to shoot a bird out of a slingshot and then hit the green pigs that have protected themselves in a massive structure made out of wood, ice, and other random materials. The first thing that I want to draw attention to is the different birds and their different powers. Each bird you fire has a different power up where you tap the screen and it helps you defeat the pigs. The first bird is of course Red, who is considered to be the leader of the flock. He's a lot like Mario in the way that he's the default bird for every single player, but he also has no special ability, unlike every single playable character in the game. He's just balanced, and that's really all there is to him. In other more modern variations of the game, he does have an ability, but considering I wanted to have nostalgia, I want it to be like the old versions where he just doesn't have any powers whatsoever. The next bird we gain access to are the three blue birds, and when in the slingshot it's just a singular blue bird, but when fired and the screen is tapped, he splits into three other variations of himself which can help knock down the towers. He's only really useful in the levels where there's not much, but he can still be handy if there's no other alternative. Just something to quickly note as well, I won't be mentioning every single bird in the game, only the more famous ones that are known from the previous versions, because I want the birds to be recognisable, so none of the modern ones or ones that you only get in the later stages of the game. Which in that case, that means that moving on to the yellow bird who gets a speed boost when the screen is tapped, the black bird that explodes, the white bird that lays an explosive egg, and Terrence, who is literally just massive. There's not much else to say because honestly I'm only going to be using this game very lightly, if at all. My main concept at the moment is just to POV of my character in a slingshot getting fired through the air, so I honestly don't need much information regarding this. I won't be including any of the special abilities either because of how difficult it would be to replicate them, so I think I'd consider this to be all of my needed research for Angry Birds. The last game I want to analyse is of course Rocket League. The mechanics of this game are however quite simple, so this won't be a very long analysis, but essentially you just drive the car towards the ball, trying to get it into the opposing player's goal. It's literally like playing football with cards and having the ability to fly as well. The mechanics for this game honestly just ends there, however the main reason for this research was just to get references for recreating this in VFX, and now I have that I honestly don't need much else. But just quickly talking about a little more to cover some more ground. In every arena you face you have these little pads on the ground that give you a boost. The bigger ones give you a max 100 and the smaller ones giving you anywhere between 15 to 33 boosts. The boost isn't just used to boost, however, if you know how to play the game you can use it to fly and perform aerials where you hit the ball in the mid-air. You can also do flips, dribble the ball, of which I can't do, etc. But it's quite an easy game to understand, and considering all I really need to know about this game is what the screen looks like, I already kind of have enough information. The purpose of this research video was just to get a better understanding of these games. Like, even if I didn't necessarily speak about it, playing them gave me a better insight into how I can later replicate this in post-production, as well as how to potentially create a better narrative if I do end up using any of these games, of which I most likely will. It was all a mixture of narrative, topic and contextual research, so I just properly understand everything I do with this, and that was essentially the reason for all of this research. Doing this video was more just a fix for not having to write thousands of more words again, just like I did for the Super Mario Bros. Research. I just wanted to get the basics of each game so I knew what I can do with them, with anything from the narrative, topic and how I can recreate them later in VFX.